6:36 this morning, as the nation remembers the 9/11 terror attacks, many also take the time to deal with the loss of loved ones years after these attacks. A local university chaplain and major in the U.S. Air Force penning a book about the effects of war, especially the Iraq War. Joining me now is Major Ken Walden from Claflin University. Major Walden, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Just to know their account and just thinking about 9/11 this morning, it's good to knowing and having someone part of the armed forces who could talk about these incidents. Major Walden, take us back to the process of writing this book, and how difficult was it for you?
Well, the writing process was very difficult, but I have the experience being stationed at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina, being stationed at Selfridge Military Base in Michigan, being stationed for 7 years at March Air Force Base in Southern California, and I'm currently at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. And the commonality between all those bases were brave men and women doing courageous acts on behalf of our country, but at the same time suffering a tremendous deal. And not only the military personnel, but also their families.
And you being a chaplain, of course, being, we could say, the voice, the inner voice for them, giving them, providing some type of healing, encouragement. What experience stands out the most for you in dealing with this incident and writing this book?
The emotional toll, the great emotional toll. For instance, I remember my first notification call. It was a young man, all of his limbs were blown off in the Middle East, and myself, along with a physician and the company commander and the driver, we were responsible for going to the family's home and letting them know the news.
Oh, wow. How do you counsel someone who comes to you dealing with the loss? Of course, we know for confidentiality purposes you can't go into specific details, but how do you counsel someone who comes to you like that and says, my loved one has passed away because they were fighting for the country, and even those affected by 9/11?
The first step is listen, intentionally listening. And the second step is affirming all of their range of emotions and allowing them to be angry, giving them the freedom to be angry, resentful, and lots of feelings of guilt. So allowing them to share all of those feelings with me and not making any judgment calls, saying that they're feeling wrong or right or correct or incorrect.
Wow, that's some important tips there. How did did you know anyone personally that was affected by the attacks? And if so, how did you counsel yourself, or how did you handle it?
Yes, that is a very good topic in terms of caregivers practicing self-care, because oftentimes caregivers do not take care of themselves. And I did know a few people personally, personal friends in the military and on the civilian side, who passed away because of those tragic incidents. And the reason, or some of the reasons that's kept me, is my faith in God, discipline in practicing prayer and meditation, and exercising a lot.
That is some pretty good tips, folks. Stay with us, because Major Walden will join us again at 7:20 to talk about his book and how it's helping others cope. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. We're back after this. This morning, as the nation remembers the 9/11 terror attacks, many also take the time to deal with the loss of loved ones years after those attacks. Major Ken Walden has been with us this morning talking about his book that he penned about the effects of war, especially the war in Iraq. Major Walden, thank you for staying with us. Last hour we left off, we talked about caregivers. As we remember the attacks again today, many people will relive this incident all over again. What type of advice do you have for loved ones grieving, where they have to see the images again, see the plane hitting the tower, right, and see Manhattan in desolation, basically?
I try to tell them that not to get fixated on the question why, because oftentimes you cannot explain the unexplainable. Why is an important question, but let's move on to that and focus on the question how to move on. So rather than focusing on why did it happen, that's a valid question, but a more important question is how can we move on, acknowledging the fragility of life, and through our pain in the midst of our pain, it is essential that we formulate a plan on how to move on.
As a major in chaplain at Claflin University, what recommendations would you give our state and city leaders as to how they should acknowledge and even recognize 9/11?
At Claflin University, I tell my students, the faculty and staff, or as a Air Force chaplain, I tell the military personnel the same advice and the same counsel. And that is, let's acknowledge what happened, but it is more important to affirm life. We can acknowledge the deaths and the tragedy, but let's affirm and value our lives.
The book is entitled Challenges Faced by Iraqi War Reservists and Their Families. How can somebody get their hands on this book?
The book is available in the local bookstores. It's also available on barnesandnobles.com, amazon.com, and I'm very happy that it's getting local and national attention. I recommend the book to each and every person who's interested in the defense of our country and armed services.
Yeah, definitely. Give us, before we leave, give us a method, another method that you use in the book, in your sessions that you give individuals. We also talked about, identifying, but moving forward. What's another message or that you use to help folks cope?
Reflect and release. Reflecting on what happened. Reflecting on what they felt and what it means to them, but then finding ways to release, and releasing through talking, releasing through exercise, releasing through prayer, releasing through therapy and counsel. Releasing, too often I tell my students at Claflin University and the military, we bottle too many things up inside. And you and I know, Mr. Fraendy, that many people are exploding like a soda bottle,
Absolutely.
like a can, like a soda candle. But life, you will get shaken up, inevitable. You cannot avoid that. You cannot prevent that. But if we shake up a soda bottle, if we just let it down, allow it to release, you can prevent exploding. So I try to tell my students and the military personnel and family members, it's okay to be shaken up, but let's find healthy ways to release to avoid exploding.
Major Ken Walden, thank you so much, sir, for coming this morning. We really do appreciate it. And once again, we have that information. You can get that book at your local bookstores to help family members out with those coping with the loss of a loved one. Before we leave, Thurman Bowens with Detox Music. He's here. He's been singing patriotic songs all morning. Here he is.
If tomorrow all my things were gone and I worked for all my life, if I had to start all over again with just my children and my wife, I would thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.